got Mr. Ezekiel Nyaitok, DG, Nigeria First Project, here to shed some light or give his perspective on the goings-on. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this has been generating huge reactions from everywhere. Many just think, whoa, why? Well, yes, it's good to have sanity in all of this, but they just think that the processes is where they got a huge challenge. They say the law is there. The Enabling Act is there that sets up the body that we should comply with. Why throw the baby away with the bathwater?
You know, I was one of the first that appeared here in this station the day that the board was inaugurated with a lawyer. And I wholeheartedly supported the move to set up the board and everything. And the lawyer was very unhappy with me because he said, look, the provisions don't meet the sections of the Constitution. And when he brought that up, for goodness sake, at this stage of my life, I will not be one to say do anything against the Constitution. So I had to go back and look at everything holistically. Now, while we were still at that, I still thought that everything should be done to get the board, you know, working, because I've been in the NNDC as a friend for a very long time. I understand the challenges that they have. But somewhere along the line, something came up that I found more interesting when the president said, look, you know, the governors, like we saw, went to pay the president a visit and raise some of these issues. The president before then had a lot of other consultations and was very livid, angry about the confidential report he had about the NNDC, how projects were abandoned, how processes were not followed, how everything was just wrong. And he said, look, please, put everything on hold. I need a forensic audit.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yes, very good.
Should the board, who is there, based, predicated on the provisions of the Enabling Act, be jettisoned for another?
Let me
processes.
When you say jettison for another, first, I was an advocate of the board. Now, what is it being jettisoned for and why? If somebody says, look, if you come on board right now and I'm having an audit, there's a likelihood that there's going to be a kind of...
Likelihood?
Yes, likelihood.
Not certainty?
No, likelihood. Every government takes decisions based on parameters on ground. You can't take a decision based on certainty all the time. You look at what's reasonable, you know, to look at. And he says, look, if I can wait for another 2-3 months, don't forget that this board has been out for over a year. If you can wait for another 2-3 months, let me have a forensic audit of everything that is going on. 12,000 abandoned projects. It's not acceptable. And like he said, you could feel the pains in the president's face when he said, look, we pay religiously and there's nothing to show for it. No responsible government would do that. And he says, look, let me clean the house. And then you come in on a clean slate. You come in on a new template. You come in on a new understanding of what should be done.
Can you suspend the law while cleaning the house?
No, you don't suspend the law.
But you still need to stick
No,
to
there's nothing in suspending. A board is, to start with, it's his prerogative to set up a board.
But there are parameters.
And that board, no.
There are provisions.
Yes, he's following.
That you need to fulfill.
That's why, you know, initially, there was this issue of where should the chairman come from. And the initial, my understanding, I did my investigations. The lady from Rivers State was supposed to be the chairman of the board. But it was made clear to Mr. President that the chairmanship should not go to a certain section of the state because the board, the constitution is very clear on how the rotation of chairmanship should be according to alphabetical order. So it's one of the things that Mr. President, because he swore to uphold the Constitution, so anything that is in the Constitution expressly as shall, not even will,
so
he must do it.
Can the minister, on his own, set up a board?
Nope, he cannot. But there's an assumption. I had to look into all these things. The minister is a representative and agent of Mr. President. And the Constitution vest the responsibility of delegation of responsibility on the president to two people, either the vice president or the minister. So the question was the minister acting unilaterally or was he acting on instruction? And it so happened that a memo, when you are a minister, what you do is whenever your boss is having a program, or even if you're a commissioner, whenever your governor or a minister, your president is having a program, whatever he says, it is your responsibility to pick that thing immediately, then work on it and do a memo to the boss, because the word of the king is law. It must not fall, and the king does not do it. He has lieutenants. So a proactive minister will listen to when a president is having a conference or a meeting, and anything that concerns his ministry, he should go back and do a memo and send back to the boss, in this case, the president. Now, the president has to he looks at it and says, hold, that's KIV. Or he looks at it and says, okay, out of this, do 1, 2, 3. Or let me have more explanation on 3, 4, 5. And then eventually, he now gives an approval in writing. Okay? Execute 1, 2, 3. Put 4, 5 on hold. Rework 6, 7. Okay? And gives it back to you. And in this case, as much as the minister and I don't always agree, but in this case, he has the president's approval in writing. So within that context, you no longer hold the minister responsible for anything. If not so, you'll be indirectly insulting the head. And that's where we are.
Let's get to Odafe Osarida, who is a development strategist, also a legal practitioner. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. I know that you have long time advocated for certain things to be done within that commission. But now that things are taking this dimension, is this what you expected?
Well, thanks, Chamberlain and the rest of the crew back then in Lagos. I'm not surprised at what is happening. Why? Because the whole idea of having an intervention agency is to bring about development. But we've not been able to attain development, and the reasons are not far-fetched. Because from UMPADEC to NDDC as we have it now, one missing thing in the whole strata is the fact that we've never had a plan to develop the Niger Delta. Yes, you'll say, oh, there's a Niger Delta master plan. But the truth is this, the Niger Delta master plan is a planless plan. Now, if you look at the function of the NDDC, apart from making policy, you'll discover that issues such as solving the Niger Delta is there, issues such as developing master plans are there, but they never went into all of that. And it didn't start today. If you go back to the Willings Commission, the commission gave 3 advice or suggestions then. 1, establish a commission. 2, appoint people. 3, develop a master plan. But none of that was done. So when you have planlessness, issues like this are bound to arise. Now, to just chip in on the issue of the dissolution of the board, if you take a close look at the Niger Delta Act, that's the Establishment and Amendment Act 2017, if you look at section 2, 3, and 5, you think you have a very wonderful paper. But if you take a closer look at it, you'll discover that if you look at section 7, sub 3, you discover that the NDDC board is an appendage of the presidency. It is not an independent board, so to speak. And on the issue of whether the president can sack the board, he's not sacked them. What he has done is that he has only asked them to step aside so that they can carry out a forensic audit. Again, remember, if you look at section 5, section 5 sub D, I think, it says where an officer of the commission, I'm paraphrasing now, commits what is an infraction, a serious misconduct, the person can be removed. Now, if the NDDC and intervention commission that is meant to bring development does not bring development. I think that can be stretched to mean misconduct.
Mr.
If the NDDC that's meant to develop the
Mr.
Niger
Sarada,
Delta,
you know, this is a whole new dimension that you're giving to this whole thing in terms of how the board is functioning. So, from what you've said now, yes, you only asked them to step aside. That's if I could quote you. But if that were the case, can you then come up with the list of another board? Should they be submitted to the National Assembly for clearance if the previous ones were suspended?
I agree that's a touchy issue, but again, if you look at the function, I'll take you to the function of the same board as established. If you look at section 7, I think it's sub 3, it says everything, all of those functions shall be at the directive of the president. So impliedly, it's saying that the NDDC cannot do anything except Mr. President allows it. So setting up on that board, some things were not procedurally properly carried out, but I don't think those are serious issues. If you take a complete look at the act, the NDDC board is not autonomous. It is not independent. It's an appendage, I stand to be corrected, of the presidency. But again, I don't think we should spend a lot of energy on that for now. The issue here is development. The question is, why are we not having development in the Niger Delta? The reason is because there has never been any plan to develop the Niger Delta. Because what you've had as a Niger Delta master plan, it's a planless plan. Because if you're talking about development, you should have a physical plan. There are more houses in Lagos, probably Kano, than Abuja. But Abuja is better. I mean, if you look at the backdrop behind me, that's a picture of Abuja. It's better because there was a physical development master plan, for Abuja. And there's never been any for the Niger Delta.
Okay, in terms of those plans,
there's never been any for the Niger Delta.
We hear you.
Yes, it's part of the function. Master plan. Look, master plan is part of the function. If you look at the function section in section 7 of the NDDC Act, it requires them to develop master plan.
But the thing about that is that
develop survey. It's part of it. It's not out of
every state will tell you.
Section 7 is there.
Yeah, but every state will tell you that they have a master plan, a development plan for the state. So whether or not successive governments follow it is a different matter entirely.
A development plan is different from a physical development master plan. What you don't have in Niger Delta is a physical development master plan. I'll give you an example. In NEOM, in Saudi Arabia, they attempted developing one. It's interesting. What they were doing in NEOM was borrowed from Nigeria. I know of a private group here in Nigeria that was developing a plan. The Niger Delta is a region that can give you, look, it can create 30 million jobs in 5 years. The Niger Delta is a place you can create an economy of $500 billion in 6 years. The Niger Delta is a region that you can, in 10 years, create a $5 trillion, I didn't say naira, economy. So until we go back to drawing a plan, and I tell you, people had worked, and there are letters to the president, there are letters to the ministers, the 4 ministers that were there before Akpabio, there were letters to them with plans. What happened to those plans? These are part of the function. A master plan is not outside the purview of the Niger Delta board. Look at function section, their function section in section 7, I believe, of the act. It's there.
Let me bring you back here for a bit.
Master plan development is there.
All right, we'll come back to you in just a moment. Well, you heard this.
Yes, to a great extent. I agree with him to the extent that we're not following what should be. Now, 2 things. First is that to have a board is a process. So when we keep talking of jettisoning a board, I'm lost, because to have a board, number 1, the president sends nominees to the Senate for screening. The Senate screens, okay, and approves. When it has been approved, it's sent back to Mr. President, who now set up the structure to inaugurate the board. It is at the inauguration stage that there is a board. Now, after that board has been put in place, we can talk in terms of jettisoning a board. But during the back and forth, the Senate can raise objections and say, this man does not meet qualification. Okay, can you send a replacement? And it keeps going back and forth. In this case, I know that about a month ago, Mr. President sent in names of nominees. As soon as that was done, there were lots of issues raised concerning the people involved. Even the governors had to go to the president. And in that interaction which you showed, Mr. President said, I have been inundated with a lot of concerns. As a result, let me set up this interim management and have an audit. And incidentally, he's setting up the audit in the 9 states at the same time, running concurrently, meaning that he wants something fast-paced. Let me get a report of the audit and let me have an informed opinion, and then I will subsequently revisit the board. If everything is in place constitutionally, then we will go ahead.
Wait, revisit what?
The board, the names, board? Yeah, the names, no previous, there was no board. The names I had sent. It's not a board.
So in the meantime,
the names I had sent. For instance,
in the meantime, what happens?
In the meantime, in the name, it's kept. Usually, I mean, President sends list to the Senate. Senate can keep it. This has been in the Senate for about a month. Don't forget that. They can't keep it till when they have time to look into it. And during this period, if this had been done and the board had been set in place before now, maybe we'll now be thinking in terms of how do we now go back and, because if you look at the Constitution, which is very clear, it says that, you know, I argued against it in this studio. I said it doesn't matter. And then somebody told me something in the Constitution with shall does not matter, that the president swore to uphold the Constitution. And where there is a shall, it is mandatory. It has nothing to do with that. Whether the president likes it or not, it is obligatory, mandatory. He must do it. So is it really true?
It doesn't matter to follow the law, or that?
No, I said I implied it didn't matter.
Okay.
And now,
but he said yes.
He said no, I must follow the law. If what I did was wrong, I'm human. I can recall and then look at it and get advice.
So are you recalling what you said previously?
Oh yes, I'm recalling. I can never come here before Nigerians and say that the president should jettison the law.
But how far, sir, do you think this review should go? Because it's almost 20 years since the NDDC has been on.
Thank you. Yes.
And we haven't had, if one of the clear functions of the NDDC is to develop the Niger Delta.
Yeah.
For how long have we been talking about the Ogoni cleanup?
Thank you.
For how long have we been talking about the livelihood of the people in this environment?
You.
So if all we're doing now is talking about reviewing or, audit of the boards and all of that, what happens to the NDDC itself? Is it performing?
What happened is because what we are doing now has not been done all over the time. That's why we have 12,000 abandoned projects. I'm not one that comes here to clap for the president. I mean, I'm not one for that. But for goodness sake, we should know where criticisms should take a turn if something right is being done. Somebody says, I'm not okay that money is just going for 20 years, it's just going like that. Can we have a break for 3 months? Can I have a forensic audit of what's been going on? Can I have a clear report so that we can go for... I think that every Niger Deltan should give Mr. President the credit for this. I will stand up and defend this because I've been very close to the NDDC, I'll say this.
And that's what I was going to take you up on. If you have been very close to the NDDC.
Yes, I have been.
What would you say the challenges were where we will now begin to record 12,000 abandoned projects?
I'll tell you this. The challenge has been that the NDDC had inadvertently become, like the minister said, an ATM machine. It had become, a resident organization in Port Harcourt, Niger Delta, managed from Abuja, okay? In the sense that the pressure on whoever is the managing director to award jobs, contracts. Just, it was an ATM machine. And that is why we want this audit done. We want to see the people. And you know the good news? So many people have started going back to site. Because people collected money. It had become, you know, the tradition. The pressure from the National Assembly, the pressure from the presidency, the threat, all sorts of things. Such that even Mr. Dan Abia, I can't come here and tell you that he's an irresponsible person. I know him one-on-one. Mr. Nsima Ekere, the same thing. But these guys are under terrible, unbearable pressure.
From whom?
From the National Assembly.
To do what?
To give them jobs.
So why are they not talking?
If you don't give... That's why they are... Have you heard any of them complain about this? They want this audit done. They want... You know, when we don't know what people go through. This is the first time we are going to have an NDDC that works. After this forensic audit, and I believe, Mr. President, the way he started, I believe God will give him that fortitude to sit on it and it will not become just another report.
You don't think that this is going to be, there's going to be room for a tiff between the National Assembly and the presidency? Because right now, the National Assembly has summoned people from the NNDC, I think some companies as well, to come and explain why they are owing the NNDC a certain amount of money. I think even the federal government too is also said to be indebted to the NNDC, not fulfilling certain elements of the law with regards to the NNDC.
The two things are, number one, the NNDC, by the act, like my brother said, empowers Mr. President to have a supervisory role over it. So whatever Mr. President is doing is what is constitutionally allowed. The National Assembly have a right of oversight. They can do the two. But where my concern is that the APC has to learn not to just keep washing dirty linen in public.
A lot of them seem to disagree.
Yeah, and you know, that's why we have a party. The party is supposed to be the interface between the presidency and the National Assembly, the clearinghouse.
Let's take this back to Mr. Asarida. Mr. Asarida, if the president has the kind of control, the kind of influence over the NDDC over the years from what you have quoted in the law, how come we have 12,000 abandoned projects of the NNDC and the presidents over the years haven't been able to do anything about it?
One, these powers are there in the law. It's another thing for a president or the succeeding presidents to understand what their powers are. And various presidents have attempted in their wisdom to distance themselves from the NNDC so that they will be accused of interfering with the day-to-day working of the NNDC. Now, I think what the real issue is how come we have 12,000 abandoned projects? The reason why we have 12,000 abandoned projects scattered over the 9 states of Niger Delta is because there is no physical development master plan. Take Abuja, for instance. Abuja is in 6 phases. Now, as big as Abuja is, I think we're in phase 3 of Abuja. But then, if I ask, what phase are we in the Niger Delta? Like I said, we don't even have a physical development master plan to work with, to measure development with, to know where the faults are. So let's go back to the drawing board. Whoever is president now, if the president can do this for the Niger Delta, develop a physical master plan, he would have achieved a lot that would bring about tangible, measurable, feasible development in the Niger Delta. And works have been done by private sector players that are ready to come in, and you'll be surprised. Like I said, if Google what happened in NEOM in Saudi Arabia, the idea was copied, in my opinion, from Nigeria here. Works have been done. Come up with a plan. If there's no plan, if you like change the board 1 million times, there'll be no development. But if there's a master plan, a new board comes and says, look, we want to take phase 1.
Isn't that supposed to be part of the functions of the NNDC to come up with a plan that they will execute once the president has approved it?
Exactly. And that's what we're saying, that the NNDC is, I said the president doesn't want to interfere, or various presidents don't want to interfere. The NNDC with all respect to them, up until now, don't know their function. That's why I said the reason why there's no development in Niger Delta is because there's a planless master plan. Remember, there's a 2006 master plan, but that plan does not have a physical development content. If you draw up a master plan, if the NDC draw up a master plan, there will be development. Of course, they can draw it up. They will get consultants and they will draw it up. A lot of work has been done, and there will be progress. Until we draw a master plan for the Niger Delta, we will not develop the Niger Delta.
First, I want to appeal to all our brothers and sisters. So far, they've been really quiet and nice. I just came from the Niger Delta, and they're like, God, let this happen. Because we are sick and tired of hearing money without seeing what on ground. Number one, let us know these people. Let the audit be done. We've waited for a year for this board. We can wait for another 3 months.
Why didn't all the previous governors speak up if this was going on?
No, the reason it's about willpower. It takes willpower for you to do what Mr. President is asking to be done.
That it was quote unquote an ATM.
Because
the minister was governor.
Yes, I agree. You see, the issue is this: even the master plan is talking about that understanding between the governors and the NDDC, because NDDC is not a state. It works with the governors. And except there is a good understanding, or except there is an overbearing influence from the north, from the top, that says, get this done. Number one, we want this audit done. Number two, we want to say that the development we are talking about is about the people of the Niger Delta. Let us go down to the grassroots. Let us bring development, these monies, instead of these highways and bridges and highfalutin things that are being done in billions that are not even done by Niger Deltans. Let us translate this, which is one of the minds of Mr. President, to villages, to rural areas, to waters, to things that will affect the lives of the people of the Niger Delta. When this is done, then we would have been in a better position to move forward. So I completely agree that what the minister is doing is within his powers. I also agree that the Senate are also seeing reason to let 3 months go, and there will be no misunderstanding, because...
And then in the future, hopefully they'll look at the east-west road.
The Niger Delta Ministry, I'm sure, will do that.
All right, then we'll have to thank you both for coming on this morning. Ezekiel Nyatok, Director General, Nigeria First Project, as well as Dafe Osari, the Development Economist and a legal practitioner. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at some feedback coming from you. We've got Anifowoshe Treasure talking about the POS charge. The CBN seems confused with their policies. How do you advocate for cashless policies and then place charges on the alternative option, which is POS and other electronic forms of payment? Review these policies and save the SMEs, he says.
And then this one is from Olagunju Oladele, talking about the CBN. Yes, we got quite a number of tweets on that one. Cashless policy is commendable. It eliminates corruption. It should come with noteworthy incentives, because unnecessary taxing on it could also reduce economic activity within the informal sector. That's from Olagunju Oladele.
And this one is from Zimo. It says, yesterday, I bought items that cost less than 2,000 naira at a local mart, and 50 naira was deducted via the POS. Why am I charged for everything? ATMs charge you, POS charges you, you pay VAT, tax. Are these not too much for the average Nigerian?
Question.
It's a major question.
Akinola Alonge also weighs in saying, the cashless policy is frustrating. I paid twice for the same item using 2 different POS, yet the POS indicated transaction not successful. I had to do a transfer. I woke up to find out I have been debited 3 times. I complained and was told bank reversal will be between 7 to 15 days. Very sad.
Very sad, man. Please take heart. But I know that sometimes, even though they will tell you 7 to 15 days, it sometimes happens a little quicker.
Sometimes it never happens.
Well, I was trying to give him some hope, Chamberlain. That's just not how to take wind out of the sail. Let's take this one from Otunshe. This is NNDC board controversy. People appointed to the board are supposed to be of integrity and confirmed by the Senate. On what basis are interim committee members better to supervise forensic audit? The president, as usual, has been advised wrongly. That's the viewpoint of Otunshe this morning.
So there you go. This cashless policy.
This cashless policy is cashing out, man.
Yeah, and people will always complain because once it affects people, I think they need to do something with the feedback.
I think the issue, yes, feedback. I think the issue really is in how it has been communicated so far. People do not really have adequate education.
Yeah.
Even if you adequately educate people, who wants to pay triple? Or
You pay,
3 times,
exactly.
4 times?
I really sympathize with that gentleman. And it's very painful that monies that have been 3 times for one item.
And imagine if you were in another state, you were visiting, and then that happens to you there, and you're back here, and you didn't think that it was, maybe you thought it was sorted. Then you get back to base, and it's not sorted.
Imagine that it's a big item. Maybe it costs 50,000 naira. Then you're debited 3 times. From which account? My heart really goes out to you. But I hope that it happens quicker than the 7 to 15 days which they proposed.
All right, there you go. Why can't it happen immediately? Because the money is charged almost. Oh, yeah. All right, well, that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain.
Well, it's great to see these guys again. Guess what? I hear they served breakfast here. Breakfast and lunch. Anyway, still not enough incentive for me to come back here. They have to try harder than that. Thank you for watching. I'm
Ayo Makinde.
because I'm looking forward to it.
You know.